last time. Let's end this, kid.
For years, the series kept us believing that Henry Creel, transformed into Vecna, was the mastermind behind the chaos. We saw the boy, the trauma, the obsession with spiders, and his ruthless evolution into something the world had never seen. But Season 5, Volume 2 is shifting the narrative forever. The truth is dawning. Vecna is not the creator. He is the creation. The Mind Flayer is the true tyrant. The storm that Will felt, the shadow that entered him, the hive that never severed, this was never Henry's design. This was recruitment, infection, preparation. When Henry stepped into Dimension X as a child, he wasn't discovering a new world. He was being discovered by one, a cosmic predator scanning timelines, searching for the perfect host, the perfect soldier, the perfect weapon. Henry believed he found purpose, power, destiny. But to the Mind Flayer, Henry was a useful extension, a shape, a voice, a vessel that could operate in the real world. Because the Mind Flayer isn't physical. It needs bodies, minds, memories, and emotional fractures to slither through like cracks in a broken mirror. And Will, unknowingly, became Plan B. The second vessel, the backup strategy. The child with a connection stronger than Henry ever had, simply because Will never wanted it. Will Byers is becoming the contradiction Henry never was. The evolution the Mind Flayer never expected. The threat it didn't plan for. Unlike Henry, Will was never seduced by power. He wasn't promised greatness. He was forced into the darkness, abducted, infected, broken, but he survived without giving in. And Volume 2 is going to show that resistance has consequences. Because the Flayer doesn't like losing, especially not to a child who has nothing left to fear. The Mind Flayer's true power isn't telepathy, monsters, or storms. It's memory. It uses memories to break, control, and suppress. Henry was controlled through guilt and trauma, the deaths of his mother, sister, and Patty. But Will's memories are the opposite. The friendships, the bonds, the moments of love that persisted even in silence. The Flayer infected him, but it never understood him. And that mistake is becoming the fracture in its reign. Volume 2 builds toward a terrifying revelation. The Mind Flayer didn't just manipulate Henry and Will, it manipulated time. The Upside Down being frozen in 1983 is not an accident. It's a bookmark. A point the Flayer refuses to release because time is the cage where its plan began. Keeping the world stuck in that trauma allows it to return to the moment where its influence first spread. If the Upside Down is a photograph, then the Flayer is the unseen hand holding the camera, controlling the frame, the angle, the story. But here's where it becomes tragic. Because while Will learns to fight the connection, Henry, buried deep inside Vecna, becomes proof that the Flayer doesn't free its servants. It consumes them. Vecna believed he was a general. In reality, he was a mouthpiece, a puppet made of bone, regret, and rage, dancing to the rhythm of an ancient hive that tolerated him only as long as he was useful. And once Will taps into the hive, once he begins turning the weapon back on the wielder, the Mind Flayer won't respond with fear. It will respond with evolution. Because predators don't just attack, they adapt. Volume 2 marks the moment the real enemy steps forward, no longer content with hiding behind children, soldiers, or monsters. The Flayer isn't planning to destroy Hawkins. It's planning to rewrite it, memory by memory, moment by moment, until the world matches the darkness it came from. Not a takeover, a replacement. By the time Volume 2 really begins, Will Byers is no longer just the boy trapped in the shadows. He has become something else. The resistance the Mind Flayer never anticipated. Every second he spent inside the hive, every dark memory he endured, every connection he maintained to Eleven, Mike, and the people he loves has been sharpening him. He is now the antithesis of Henry Creel's legacy. Where Vecna fell to manipulation, Will rises through it. Where Henry was consumed, Will channels the darkness into understanding it, learning it, and ultimately turning it against the Flayer. This isn't simply a power-up or a sudden reveal. Will's evolution is deeply emotional, structured like a mirror reflecting Henry's path, the isolation, the trauma, the corruption. But the reflection is inverted. Instead of surrendering to rage, Will channels the hive mind's energy as a tool for insight and strategy. He begins seeing patterns, anticipating Vecna's moves before they happen. The connection that the Mind Flayer once used to fracture him now becomes a weapon. Each psychic thread between him and the hive becomes a roadmap, a way to track not just Vecna, but the very origin of the Flayer's influence in Hawkins. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Every character around him depends on his strength, yet he also carries the guilt of knowing what could happen if he fails. The memories of Henry's rise to power haunt him like a warning. The image of a boy turned monster through manipulation is a constant shadow over his every decision. But this time, Will is armed with something Henry never had: empathy, trust, and a deep-rooted bond with the people who understand him. This makes him unpredictable, dangerous, unstoppable. Meanwhile, Vecna remains a terrifying force. But for the first time, cracks begin to show. His confidence, once unshakable, starts to falter in the presence of Will's resistance. The very darkness that Vecna used to weaponize others, trauma, fear, isolation, begins to rebel against its master. The Flayer's hold over him is not absolute. Memories of his own humanity flicker to the surface, threatening to undo years of manipulation. The viewers will witness, in chilling detail, a monster struggling with remnants of a boy who once was. A battle waged within Vecna's own mind, even as he unleashes terror outside. As Will learns to wield the hive mind, the audience sees the full scope of the Mind Flayer's strategy. The Flayer never simply wants control. It wants perfection. A world reshaped in its image. Every event, every death, every corrupted soul is a piece in a puzzle meant to reconstruct Hawkins, then the planet. Vecna was supposed to be the executioner. And in a cruel irony, his failure mirrors what the Flayer fears most: unpredictability born from genuine human connection. This is why Will's role becomes pivotal. He is the anomaly, the glitch in the system, the variable that cannot be calculated or predicted. The next phase of the story pushes Will to extreme limits. He begins to experiment with the hive mind, not just to fight Vecna, but to understand the Flayer itself. He sees visions of its past manipulations, the moment it first discovered Henry, the timeline it tried to rewrite. Every vision is a fragment of horror, a piece of history that was never meant to be seen. And through these visions, the audience will understand just how intertwined Hawkins has been with the Flayer's plan. Nothing is accidental. Every death, every disappearance, every shadowed corner of the town was meticulously orchestrated to prepare for this moment. However, this mastery comes at a cost. The hive mind is not forgiving, and Will's connection is tenuous. Every use of its power frays his mind, blurs the line between reality and illusion, life and death, past and present. Yet he persists, driven by the stakes, the survival of his friends, the exposure of the flayer, and the reclamation of a town that has endured more pain than any single generation should bear. This is where the narrative's suspense deepens. The viewers are never sure if Will's growing power will save Hawkins or consume him entirely, just as it did Henry. The tension is relentless because the flayer's retaliation is brutal, immediate, and psychological. It knows Will is the first real threat it has ever faced, and it will not relent. Simultaneously, the relationships in Hawkins provide both grounding and tension. Levin's connection with Will becomes central, a psychic partnership that allows them to synchronize attacks, anticipate the flayer's moves, and protect those they care about most. Mike, Lucas, and Max act as anchors to reality, preventing Will from succumbing entirely to the hive's pull. Every emotional beat adds weight, reminding the audience that this is not just a battle of powers, but of hearts and minds. It is the intimate human element of the story that gives Volume 2 its tension. The stakes are cosmic, yet the emotional resonance is deeply personal. Will Byers is no longer the boy in the shadows. He is the reflection of Hawkins's resilience, the mirror of Vecna's failures, and the variable that will determine whether the darkness claims victory or collapses under the weight of its own ambition. The battle isn't just about monsters. It's about the human spirit asserting itself against manipulation, trauma, and a force that has rewritten history. And in Volume 2, that struggle becomes the heartbeat of the narrative, propelling every twist, every reveal, and every shocking moment. While Will emerges as the strategic force against the Mind Flayer, the human cost of Hawkins's apocalypse becomes brutally clear through Jonathan Byers. For years, Jonathan has been the moral compass of the show, steadfast, loyal, and willing to risk everything for those he loves. His relationship with Nancy, woven throughout multiple seasons, has always symbolized hope amid darkness. But in Volume 2, hope is shown to be fragile, fleeting, and often tragically insufficient. Jonathan's journey in this final volume isn't about survival. It's about legacy, love, and the final act of heroism that defines a character, not just for themselves, but for those left behind.